I just woke up in the middle of the night. Lying here in bed. And I realize that my higher intellectual center opened, and what that higher intellectual center is. The only way the higher intellectual center can open is if your higher emotional center is open. Remember that the higher emotional center for me was Tiferet, that opened last week, where I considered that the solar plexus of the diaphragm. And this opened for me like two parts of the body, up and down in the diaphragm, because it's the middle. It's like the sun. The sun has, it to me, is like a ball, like a tennis ball, right in the middle of my solar plexus, of what I consider the diaphragm, where I breathe, the up and the down. And the reason I'm able to discover this here is that it has parallels to the video that I was going to do, which I'm going to include here now. It has parallels to the Netzach, Sheba Netzach, the 25th day of the Omer, because the 25th day of the Omer is 25 when you count from the top, meaning from Hesed Sheba Hesed. It comes out to Netzach Sheba Netzach. But the amazing thing is, if you count from the bottom, Malkus Sheba Malkus, 25, it also comes out to Netzach Sheba Netzach. So it's the 25th day is 25 from the top and 25 from the bottom. It's right in the middle. It's half. And the amazing thing is that this Netzach Sheba Netzach is 5 times 5. Remember that next week, when we get to Hod Sheba Hod, it's actually the 33rd day of the Omer. And this 33rd day of the Omer is it's the 5th day of the 5th week. It's another 5 times by 5, and the 5 dinim are finished on this day. So it's the end of the dinim. And amazingly, from the bottom on the 33rd day, it comes out to be Tiferet Sheba Tiferet. And that's the fire burning day of Lag Bomer, when you count from the bottom. And that's where I am with the intuitive brain. With the what I call the higher emotional center. And that's what happened this morning was, I realized that after the higher emotional center is open, there's another center that's left to open, and that's the higher intellectual center. And that higher intellectual center is actually the intuitive mind. And so it can only open, the intuitive mind can only open, meaning intuitea, to see inside, that can only open after the higher emotional center opens, and this is how it works. The first emotional center is also in this heart, which I consider Tiferet. And then it goes back it goes up, it continues up, and then it goes to Bina. Now this is all evident on the tefillin, because you put the tefillin of the arm on first, and you press it against your heart. And then you put the head on, you see. But remember, there are two shins up there on the head. So first you put the head on, that's the left, and that's the intellectual center. The left brain, the Bina, is the intellectual center. You see? And that's what we normally get to. That's where the nefesh is. Excuse me. The neshama is in the higher, in the normative intellectual center. That's the nefesh. Excuse me, neshama. It's in the middle of the night here. I may be making some verbal mistakes. But this is the best time to do things, like when you wake up after your whole soul has been elevated to out of the body, and then it comes back in the body. After you've been dreaming and things like that. And so goes back. So first you go into that intellectual center in Bina. Then what happens is the higher, you can come back and open up the higher emotional center, which is back into Tiferet, in the diaphragm itself, and the internal level of the body itself is the higher emotional center. Yeah, the blood of the heart, but then there's the breath that carries the emotions. And after this opens up, what's going to open? Comes back to the right side of the brain where the shin is. So first you go to Bina, then you come back to Tiferet, and then you go back up to Chokmah. Chokmah is the intuitive brain. And that's the intuitive Torah. It's taught to you in the womb of Bina. It's an intuitive Torah. It's in the right brain. And that right brain has a parallel into the left hand. And that left hand is when you wrap that finger of the left hand for the Torah, for the tefillin, and that activates the right brain, the shin in the right brain, and those two shins up there represent intellect and intuition. And in school you go for intellect, nefesh, the neshama, but there's a higher above it. This is the original spot of Yah, Yud Hey, which is manifested later in well, that's the name of the intuitive Torah, the intuitive brain. There's an intuitive Torah that's taught you in the womb. That's a experiential body orientation that has no books. Has no books. It's like now that we're on this desert island in isolation, what would you do if you had no books? You'd have to comb through your body for your experiential and for what you received. So Chokmah, Koach Ma, power of manifestation. Number 73 is found in the right brain, which can only be accessed after you've gone into the left brain, gone back into Tiferet, and opened up the sun there, Shemesh. When those two open, because there are two shins in the word Shemesh, when that two opens, then you can come back into now the intuitive mind, intuiter, the sight, the insight, because Chokmah has to do with sight, has to do with the eyes, but in the deepest sense has to do with this seeing inside. When this occurs, then there's a parallel here again. The upper levels of the Cherubim. There are different levels in Cherubim. This level of Chokmah and Bina is the intellect and the high and the intellectual center and the higher intellectual center. Remember that both Chokmah and Bina have regular level, and then Chokmah Ilya, and then there's Chokmah Bina, and then Bina Ilya. There's higher centers in both sides. But the truth is a mesh, because they never what do you call it? They never separate. It's Abba and Ima. They never separate. And this is the highest level of the Cherubim. But this is also paralleled starting on the 25th day of the Omer, when we're going to have the 25th day of the Omer, we're going to have Netzach Shabbat Netzach. Netzach is also a cherub. And so is Hod. Hod's going to be on Lag BaOmer. And these two cherubim actually represent the conversation that goes on in the cherubim in Shia HaSharim. And these cherubim, the male cherub in Netzach Shabbat Netzach, because Netzach is more of a male orientation, of an active, and that's Hashem. That's, I don't know it, Sivarot. And quite frankly, Hod Shabahod is considered the Jewish people. And that's the relationship, that's the love relationship in Shia HaSharim of HaKodesh Baruch Hu and the Jewish people. Netzach and Hod, the two testicles. Then again go as one, the two legs which actually go as one. Remember, hands are separate. You have, your hand can do this, your other left hand can do that. But the legs go as one. And this all come about because of the 25th day of the Omer. And because my higher intellectual, my higher emotional center opened, the Tiferet, the breathing in the heart, and then all of a sudden, pow, the intuitive mind. Pow, the intuitive mind that one waits for, can only open after the intellectual mind opens, come back into the body for the heart, and the diaphragms open in half the body, to have the sun there, the Shemesh, which is in the middle of the solar system. And then, because the sun is remember that in these are not vertical, they're horizontal around the body, and it shines up and it shines down equally, and left and right. And this is how you should think of yourself, as a sun in the middle. And that's UN. And then it comes into the body for the real thing. And then you get spoken to. You get spoken to. Because there are 3 levels of cherubs. It's Tiferet and Malchus. So that intellect, higher emotional center also has a relationship, has it to Malchus. The Netzach and Hod have a relationship, and obviously, but they're impermanent, so to speak. And the true relationship is in Abba and Ima, which are never separated. They're never separated after the intuitive brain comes into play, after Chokmah comes into play. And it doesn't come into play so easily, because we're kept from it. We're kept from left-hand usage and left-hand recognition and realization in the society. And left hand has a cross relationship to right brain. And it really is intuition. It's seeing within. And all this comes from the Rachem, the womb, Rachamim. This Rachamim. Which in a certain level is, of course, Yesod of Ima. Just like the genitals are Yesod of Abba. And these all filter down into Malchus, which is the physicalization of all these internal processes. So this body is Malchus. These are some morning thoughts. Dancing in the dark here. In the middle of the night, and my higher intellectual center opened, and I'm being spoken to through my intuitive brain. I look forward to what's next.